Hello, everyone. This is Reza Dorrani. Welcome to the R&D show.
Hey everyone, this is Daniel Christian, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So, Dan, how has your week been? I see a lot of caps at the back.
Oh yeah, so I finally got my office upgraded. Honestly, last weekend was so relaxing. My family we made a quick getaway up the mountains, and we enjoyed the fall season. It was a much needed R&R. So this week was good. It was super busy,
Yeah.
but it was a good week. So I'm glad. But I'm really excited about our show today because we got some nice jam-packed things to show. So I'm excited. But how was yours, Reza?
My week was good, relaxing again with family. Spent some time working on my new video idea, and then of course we synced up on this session. So I think we've got a lot lined up. We've got a lot to cover, and we have 1 hour. So let's get started. And Dan, I'm assuming you're starting first.
Yes, I am. All right, cool. So we're gonna, we'll start easy and let's work our way up because today is Power Automate Day, and as you can see, I'm wearing my old. This is actually my old Microsoft Flow one back in the day. Cool, and there you go. Reza's got a nice one, so we're all super stoked about this. So let's start simple, and then we'll work our way up. First things first, and I know a lot of people do this. I actually encourage some of this. Is that when you're starting to build flows, Power Automate flows, before you go and build it from scratch, come over here, look at your templates. There is some really neat stuff available to look at it, and look at your search on the top. You've got all of them. So I'm going to show you some examples, at least one of them, and we go through. But I do want to make one call out though. There is from time to time some templates which may be a little old. And you can understand that when you go into the template, when you go in and kind of look at it, you might see, oh, this version of this action is maybe an older version. There's a newer version. So it doesn't happen very often. They do a really good job keeping these templates updated. But I do want to call this out because today is all about tips and tricks, maybe a little bit of advice in there as well. All right. But the big one that I want to show you is actually one that Reza brought to my attention because he's a heavy user of it. And so I want to show that to you. So you come here to your Power Automate flow. And it's been a hit and miss sometimes finding it. So here's how we recommend. When you're in the default Power Automate screen, you want to come into templates, and in templates, make sure that you are on all flows. And in all flows, do a search, and in the search, start typing in state machine. And most of the time, and I say literally most, like 9 out of 10 times, you will find this one. If you don't, go ahead and switch over to the featured and then do a search over there as well. That's trick number one. Second trick is if you don't search for it, getting the first shot, you might get a whole bunch of other ones. Hit enter again, and then you'll find it. But folks, this is literally a jewel. It's a hidden jewel because check this out. Okay, I'm going to go and click on it, and it uses a very sweet concept / logic of how to do state machine. So we won't deep dive into this, but I do want to spend just a few seconds, for you to actually take a look at what this whole thing is. I'm going to go and zoom out a little bit, and in the zooming out, the first trigger is just the same thing. Is go ahead and create a file. Properties are there. You can change this trigger based on what your requirement is, and I'll talk about triggers briefly in just a few seconds. But then afterwards, you go and do the initializing. See, this section is where the state machine logic kicks in, because after you've created the variable, it's going and saying, okay, what is my status of this document? It's in a state right now. It's going to, the initial state was a new document, right? The value is the state over there. It was a new document. And then anytime the document is now updated, it will go ahead and wait over here. Basically, this is the do until. Then after that, we go ahead and have the switch case. And the switch cases are depending on each of these cases over here. So this has actually now become my new favorite of replicating state machine type of logic in Power Automate. Thanks, Reza, for bringing this to my attention, man. I really did not know about this. So really, major kudos on that one. But this is the beauty of templates. Again, I want to repeat what I said before, is that specifically with Power Automate, when you get a chance to go ahead and start playing with Power Apps, playing with all these flows, like don't spend too much time building it from scratch. Take one of these, and then after that, you can go and tweak it. So let's actually switch gears a little bit and just talk about it. Basically, it's just a repetition of what Reza and I had done a while back. But I want to quickly call out these templates that you have. So when you go and create, not templates, but these type of flow triggers that you have. So all in all, there is 5 of them. There's actually a 6th one coming out as well. It's based on geolocation. It's still in preview. Maybe Reza and I will demo that some other time. But here are the big triggers that are available. And I'll tell you, these 3 are the ones. If you haven't already, go check on your flows. More than likely, you've actually used these ones. So these are the main big ones that are there. And that's how you pick and choose your templates for all these triggers. And I'll also do a quick example. So I'm going to go and do this instant cloud flow. When I click on the instant cloud flow, I'm going to say this is the manually triggered one. Anytime you want to click on those virtual buttons, which you open up on your small mobile device, this is the one that you create. Okay, you click on that, and it comes into this place over here. Oh, and I got to show you another neat one. This is, by the way, Reza's favorite. I think for each and every flow, he goes ahead and uses this. It is adding emojis to your flow name. So here's the way you do it. All right, you go ahead and hit your Windows tab, your Windows, not tab, but the key on your keyboard. You click on that, and while that is pressed down, you hit the period button. And what happens is you get these emojis show up. Now, this is coming from the operating system, which is the Windows operating system. It's not built into like the Power Platform, but it still works. So I'm going to actually come up with a simple one. If I wanted to say, hey, this flow, I see you, but I wanted to use an emoji, I'll say I, and then afterwards, I'll come back to my emojis right here. Come on. See, it actually went ahead and confused me a little bit. So I got to get out. Oops. I got to go and get out of it, come back out to the next line, click on the Windows, click on I, and not I, click on period. There you go. Click on period. And then I say C, go outside, and now put space, and you. I actually put an emoji over there in my flow name. Isn't that awesome? And then I can just go ahead and put something else just to make sure that I complete the flow, because right now I can't go ahead and save anything. So I'll just, put in, Reza, see what I did? I'll touch that in a minute. I'm going to go and click on that. Say username, save it. I go outside, and it's saving. And once it saves, I'll be able to, it's save completely. So I'll go outside the flow. And right there, it took the emoji as my flow name. If I even go further outside, you will see all the flows. You see an emoji over there as my flow name. That just brings a smile on my face. I think if I were to take a look at Reza's, tenant, all his flows pretty much have some icons. And hey, why not, right? You have all the flexibility to go and do it. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about this one thing, and then we'll transition over to Reza, is when we are building flows, and even Reza will actually demonstrate some maybe with that, but this is the whole concept of starting to use the experimental mode. And Reza, I'll be honest, I was a little weary on this, is because hey, it's an experimental mode, but we are doing a live demo on tips and tricks, so just go big or go home. What do you think, Reza? Should we or should we not do this? What do you think?
In scenarios, about the experimental feature first. This is for user, so it's a choice that every user makes. So if I turn this on, I'm not turning this on for my tenant. I'm turning this on for myself. And as the warning there clearly highlights, when you turn this on, you are stating that you're okay for experimental features which could change, which could break, or disappear at any time. Now, are these going to impact your flows? No. Are these going to impact your flow development? Maybe. So if you run into any issues, they're not going to be supported here. These are experimental. Switch back to the classic experience. Why you would use this? There are many good reasons for it. One of them is expressions that Dan is going to cover later on.
Exactly. So I had it turned on. I'm going to actually turn it off. And right now, if I click on it, this is what it looks like. This is something we're used to. But if I go and now turn it on, I'm getting too excited over here. If I go and turn on to view all Power Automate settings, you have to go and pick your language, your regional format, and then you turn it on. And the moment you do that, and it's saved, it does kick you out. In fact, when I was testing this, if you had any of the additional steps that you did not save, you will go ahead and lose that. But then once you're in, you click on it, you didn't automatically see your dynamics place over here. This is what you see. So right now your dynamic value shows up over here with the search built into it. And I'll be actually building, just a few seconds down the road, I'll be building some flows, and you'll see me heavily leverage this. But we also have our older design, which is the expressions. Over here, don't come and click on this, because if you click on it, nothing's wrong. It will just take you to the link to show you all your languages. What you have to do is right now over here, you can start typing it in. And the moment you type it in, this is what it'll do. IntelliSense will kick in and give you, based on the search that you did, what are the available expressions for that. So what I just did right now in the 10 some minutes is just showed you the templates, went ahead and showed you, be careful when you use the templates because some of them might be a little bit old. Also, we quickly went ahead and showed you the hidden jewel, which is the state machine one, and then how to add emojis over there. But now I'm going to hand this over to Reza because he's going to start showing you how to build from the SharePoint and Flow side. And he's going to show you some nice tips and tricks over there. I'm going to hand that over to you, Reza. Go ahead and wow us with some of your tips and tricks.
Absolutely. So continuing with the trend of templates, why are we trying to promote templates here? Well, because one of the biggest reasons of using templates is reusability, right? There's something available, I can pick that and I can start building my flow. Is this going to meet my exact requirement? Maybe not, but even if it gets me 10% of the way there, that's not a bad deal. So there are many reasons to use templates, and there are many reasons to avoid templates as well. And I like that Dan highlighted that fact that some of these templates use outdated connections and actions. So you got to be aware of those aspects. And many a times what I look in templates are patterns. The videos that I build, the ideas that I put out, some of them are actually inspired from patterns that I acquired from templates. And let me show you one of that right now. So I'm going to add my screen up. There we go. Let me try and increase the width further. Perfect. Okay. So I am in Flow, and let's take a very simple use case to begin with. My favorite, SharePoint. So we have a simple SharePoint list that tracks expense report details. And let's say we want to put an approval process around the expense requests that come in into the specific list. Now, the way we begin, or typically the way we begin creating an approval process, is we head over to Flow and we start selecting our trigger depending upon our use case. In this case, more or less, I would use an automated cloud flow because I would like to trigger my flow automatically when a new expense report comes in. And then we start building our entire flow. We add the approval action and so on and so forth. Dan and I have done multiple videos on those scenarios. That's not wrong. You could build it from scratch, but there is a template that can take you 10 levels forward. And let me show you that. So in SharePoint itself, and this is the power of integration of this platform, right here on the top, we have this integrate button. If I select this, there's an option here for Power Automate. Now here we have multiple options. I will click on create a flow. And right here, we are presented once again with the templates that are related to SharePoint as a connector. Now, one of the interesting templates here is something called request approval, wherein request approval, everyone must approve for a selected item. That means the person who creates this expense report item will have the ability to go ahead and trigger this flow manually. So let's pick this. And once again, this is a template. So it's going to showcase what the template has, what are the connections that this template uses. And I will go ahead and click create flow. Now, here's the beauty of this. This is going to set up a complete approval flow for me from scratch based upon that template, of course. And let's look at this flow in action and let's observe the patterns that this template is showcasing. That's the beauty of this. So this flow runs when an item is selected in my SharePoint list. This is kind of a button trigger, so it allows you to add input parameters as well. And look at the different parameters that this action already comes with, at least in this template. A message that the user would want to put forth to the request as the requester to the approvers. The user can dynamically define the approvers themselves right here. They can even define if they need approval reminders. How frequently would they want to remind those approvers? And what is the duration of that? So these are properties that have been defined right here in the trigger action. And this is a template, so you don't have to stick to what the template provides you. Once you have the template installed, this is your flow. If you want your approvers to be predefined and not picked dynamically, I can easily just go ahead and remove this field from here. It's disabled right now because this is being leveraged in preceding actions in the flow. Once I remove the association, that functionality will go away. So the flow triggers, and then it goes and grabs the information about the item, and then it begins the approval process. Now, the beauty here is that everything is baked for me already thanks to this template. And right here is the pattern for approval reminders. I think every week I get a request around approval reminders. I'm trying to create a reminder pattern. Look at this. The pattern's right here. It's a part of the template, right? It's checking to see if a decision was taken for the approval. If not, go delay it based upon the specific parameter that the user picks when they trigger the flow. So here's a reminder pattern for sending approval reminders. Here is an action that creates the approval. Here's the action that waits for the approval. Once the approval decision is taken, if you need a summary of your approvals to be sent out to your users, they've already provided those actions for us right here. The name of the approver, the comments that they've put in, the response, it's plugged into an HTML table, it's nicely styled. And then finally, based on the decision that is taken for the approval, it goes ahead and sends the creator an item approved or an item rejected email that you can customize once again. So look at the power that this template already possesses. So I've got this flow built on this template. And of course, as I mentioned, we can customize this. So let's say we extend this a little. Here I have my list. In this, I have an approval status column. Whenever a new expense report comes in, the status is new. Once the approval begins, the status needs to change to pending. So let's do that. Once the approval begins, so right before the approval action, I'm going to update this flow. I'm going to call the update item action and flow to update my list. So I pick my SharePoint site. I pick my list, which is called expense reports. I give the ID of that specific item. Any mandatory fields you will have to refill again. There is no ways around this. So I'll just pick the mandatory fields, and it looks like I have quite a few of them here, but I will quickly just select those mandatory fields. And once I have all of those picked in, this completes my update item action. And here, right before the approval starting, I would like to change the status to pending. So that's the change that I've made here. And once a decision is made, I would like to change the status again. Now I can re-add this action, and here's another tip. I could re-add this action again, but there's something known as copy paste. You can just select this action right here, go to copy to clipboard, go to my condition, which checks the response of the approval, whether it's rejected or approved. When we send out the item rejected email, right here, I will reuse that same action, and I will change the status in this case to rejected. And let me do the same thing in case the item is approved, but here the status would be approved. Within seconds, I got this flow built thanks to a wonderful template that was made available for us, which has a lot of these reusable patterns. So my flow is ready to go. It's turned on, and now my flow is listening to a trigger action, which is when the user selects an item and says they want to start the approval process. Back to my SharePoint list, if I refresh this, let's go ahead and create a new expense item. So I'm going to call this my travel to Florida item. I traveled $600, just trying to enter some random details right now just to fill the form out. So I just filled my details. Here is my list item that got created in this SharePoint list. Now, how do I start the approval process? From where? Well, the user will have to select the item, go to automate, and now we should have our flow listed right here because we said that the flow triggers when an item is selected. So I selected the item, I see the flow right here. If I click on this, it will launch a panel right here in the context of SharePoint on the right-hand side. And because this is the first time as a user that I'm trying to access this flow, it's going to ask me to consent to the connections of the flow. So I have consented to that. Now it opens up that form. This form was defined as the trigger action of the flow. So check this out. Here, I need to fill in details. I need to send some details to my approval. So I'm going to say, please approve my expense request. Okay, bad spelling, but that's okay. who are my approvers? Dynamically defining approvers right here. So let's say I pick a couple of approvers. I pick Sarah and I pick James. Do you want to send approval reminders? Well, yes. How frequently? Well, let me send them this reminder once a week. So all of these functionality here is all natively baked in thanks to that template, which can be customized and extended. Now, once I have this in place, and if I click on run the flow, this will now trigger that flow that we just created. And once the flow triggers right here, we will notice that we will see a run for the flow. And if I head back to SharePoint and if I refresh this, we can see how the status is now changed to pending. And why did the status change to pending? Well, that's because we changed the status in the flow right before the approval action by adding this update item action. Now it's gone in to the approval process. And right now it is waiting for the approvers to respond. And my approvers are James and Sarah. Now, of course, I cannot switch screens to the other users, but as we speak, I receive an approval task for James. And I'm going to go ahead and say, OK for James. And you will have to believe me that this is happening at the back end. And I'm also going to try and sign in with Sarah and say like, OK, I'm going to approve this request. I'm going to be nice. So both of them have taken their decision. And the moment the decision gets recorded, we will see how this flow moves ahead now and goes and completes. So it's just waiting for both those decisions to be recorded in the system. Once they are, this flow will move ahead. Okay, the flow has completed. Now, the last step was to send an approval or a notification email to the person who created the request. So check this out. I receive an email, and how cool is this? I receive an email that says, Reza, your request has been approved because both the approvers. Oh, Dan, there is some echo in the backdrop. I think it's coming from your side. Sorry. So both the users have said that they've approved this. And we can see a table here that shows the approval decision, who the approver was, and their comments. So how nice is that? All of these are coming out of the box based on that one simple template. So that's how you can leverage existing templates and connect it to your data sources of choice. In my case here, SharePoint. Now, very quickly, I'll try and expand on this a little bit before we once again switch over to Dan. For SharePoint, there's something known as formatting, wherein you can format a column, you can format the view in SharePoint. I believe we have Tetsuya on the call as well. Hey, Tetsuya. He's one of the experts in SharePoint list and column formatting. So I want to give him a big shout out and thanks for joining. So one option, as I mentioned, was we select an item and we go to automate and we select our flow and the approval process starts. But if I want the user not to select an item, go here, begin the process, there are many clicks that the user has to go through this. What we can also do is I can add a very simple column here. I'm going to call this start approval, single line of text column. So I've just created a column. I will move this column right here so we can see it in action. I'm going to try and move this here. Okay, so it's refusing to move. No problem. We will move to the right. So here's the column that I just created. Now in this column is where I will go and add a little bit of formatting. Now, if you head over to the PNP samples for column or view formatting, right here, if I search for flow, there is a sample provided called start the flow. And here, there is a JSON object that has been provided for us. And literally all I'm going to do is copy this, go back to SharePoint, go to my column settings, format this column, advanced mode, and just paste that JSON that I copied from there right here. And if I click on preview, you will observe right now it's showcasing something. It's showcasing a button that says it's flow time. So I'm going to change this. I want to call this start approval process. Right? Let's preview this. You see it says start approval process. And right here, what you need is the ID of your flow. Now, how do I grab the ID of my flow? If I head back to the flow, and this is something that got released very recently, if you go to the details of the flow and head over to export, there is a new option now called Get Flow Identifier. And here, if I copy this and if I put it in a sample text file, Right at the end is where you get the ID of the flow. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, go back to SharePoint, and just plug that ID right here and click Save. Now, if I was to just click on this button right here, you will observe that that same flow that we created is now launching on the right-hand side. And that is specific to the item that I selected. So rather than the user going and selecting an item, going to the ribbon and clicking that step, we've added this link right here, which literally triggers the flow within the context of SharePoint itself. And since this is formatting, we have a lot more options to play with. For example, if my status is approved, why would the user start the approval process again? I don't think that makes sense, right? So can we go and stop the user from starting that process again? And the user should only be able to start the process if the item has been created by them. I do not want other users to start the process. Again, this is not true security, but we can show and hide. So once again, heading back to column formatting, right here, I have a style attribute. Now I had this prepared beforehand, of course. So I'm just going to plug in my function here, which says, if the approval status is approved or the approval status is pending, okay? In both those cases, do not show this button. And if the approver is me, that is, I am the person who has created the item, in that case, show this. So let's save this. Now you see, I don't get any start approval button right here. That's because if we were to focus on the statuses, they are either approved or rejected. Now, rejected should show up, but this item that was rejected has not been created by me. So let me create another item very quickly here. And I'm just going to call this test. Just going to plug in some numbers here just to quickly breeze through this. So let's say I've created a new item. Now, the status is new. The creator is Reza. So I will see that button populate here. So now we have conditionally made that flow available to our users based upon if they are the creator, plus based upon the status of the flow. So these are some powerful integration capabilities that you can leverage in Power Automate along with SharePoint and create these amazing experiences for your users. So I hope you guys enjoyed that.
Well, what blew my mind was how you can go ahead and put in those flow properties that you need to trigger the flow, and it's flows form directly inside the SharePoint. So you didn't have to go in flow to trigger it over there. You all did it inside the SharePoint containment. That was pretty impressive, man. That was pretty impressive. I like that. I also like that how the flows, basically the link over there dynamically updates, telling you what it was, and you were able to update the text over there as well. Oh, that was pretty neat as well. I like that.
So now the question is, who's going to make a video on this?
No. We'll see. Cool. I like that. All right. So now we're going to switch over to a topic which we all know, but it's some things wrong. But this is the tips and tricks, and this is beginner level / we're going to share some ideas over there, and that is about expressions. Now I know when I talk about expressions, everybody gets excited. Everybody also expects a lot. So we're going to share some tips and tricks. And then hopefully that will be helpful to you. So, Reza, is my screen being shared?
Yes, your screen has been shared.
Awesome. All right, because I completely missed that. Yep, I'm in good shape. So first things first, I already talked about the fact that we had these different triggers. I showed you those 3 big ones over there. So I'm going to go ahead and now go into create. And for the sake of this demo, I'm going to start off with the one which is instant cloud flow. And this instant cloud flow, the one I'll select is the manual trigger a flow. Now I'll give you some tidbits on the way as well. All right. A couple of things we know is that when you're building the scheduled one, many a times you actually go ahead and start with the manual trigger one. Because when you're doing a schedule, you don't want to schedule every second or at least every minute when you're testing it. When you're building the initial one, build it with the manual trigger flow so that when you've made the change in your flow logic and want to test it, you can come and click on the manual one, for triggering the flow, and then everything is good, go ahead and change it to the schedule one. So that's the first, tidbit over there. All right, so I'm going to come in now, and I'm going to go and call this as the R&D show live, and I have to go and put in a name. So first thing I'm going to do after I've got this manual trigger flow is I'll leave it as is, but I got to go and put in some information. All right, so go ahead and created the flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and now put in my compose. Now, for those of you who have used Compose, it is a big help to go ahead and start finding out what is the data that you're working in. Basically, this is the place to troubleshoot. And what I mean by troubleshoot is in an example right here is I'm going ahead and actually going to use the dynamic variable to see what is my username like. So I can go and put in username. That's just to see that, hey, I think my username comes in this syntax, but is it coming in that syntax? Well, how do you find that out? Go ahead and put it in the compose statement, because compose statement is not going to affect your flow. It's not going to send any notification. It's going to help you to troubleshoot to see that at that state in your flow, how are you able to troubleshoot that? So compose is really neat for this standpoint. Now, what I'm going to do though is for this one, I'm going to show you a very commonly used expression, and that is to go ahead and get your time now. And for that, you type in your UTC. So I'm going to actually go and click on this, and I'll type in the expression, which is on the FX one. And there I'll type in UTC now, and I'll go and click on UTC now. And let's go and run it, right? So we'll go and see how that looks like. So I'll actually get the, I got a double UTC coming in. So let me go and clear that text. I'll go ahead and do a flow check. Flow check is 0 errors, 0 warnings. Awesome. Click on save. And I can do two things. I can go ahead and go outside the flow itself, and I can run it over there, or I can go and do a test over here as well. It's a manual one, so I can go and do a test. Click on test, and it is saying, go ahead and run the flow. Again, this is for the first time. Now, first tidbit, this successful means that it only triggered the flow successful. It doesn't mean that that flow has run successful, okay? Just keep that in mind. But this is the one we want to see. We like to see these green lines up over there, highlighted saying your flow ran successfully. So let's go and see that. Now, here is this UTC formula that we see, UTC format for the time. And let's face it, it's a little confusing, all right? So how do we go and change that? Now, there is actually a very interesting one, is to go ahead and use the date time action. So I'll show you that. In fact, I'll go ahead and keep this one so we can see what it is. Here's the tip. Go ahead and now rename your steps. So you come onto the ellipsis, click on that, and I'll rename it. And I can just say compose with original UTC. Next, I'll go ahead and create another compose. Click on compose, and it shows up. So I'll click on that. This one, I'll go ahead and I'll rename that to date and time format. See, it's something that makes sense to you at that point in time, because you build a flow right now. You've been working on it for a few days. Everything is clear in your mind. You don't, and then after that, you don't even look at it for a month or 2 months or maybe even a year. These comments and this naming really helps you to kind of remember all that. And we'll talk a little bit more on the commenting piece as well. Cool. So over here now, I'm going to go ahead and now, actually, I missed a step before that, is to go ahead and put in the date and time. So there is the date. Now you can just search for date, you can search for date and time, but this is the one that we want to look for, date and time. In the date and time, it is the convert time zone. So let's step back. So, well, Daniel, you just told me that you want to change the syntax of the time. Why are you changing the convert time zone? Because the convert time zone is actually a little trick that we can use to go ahead and just change the syntax. And here's what I mean. I'm going to go to the baseline, and in the baseline, I can go and type in, the UTC command, or I can just go and use this action, which I already did, or that step. Now, keep the source time and the destination time as same. Now, it is same in this condition because all we are doing is changing the format. There will be legitimate moments when you will have to change the source time and the destination time, but that depends on what was the scenario for that flow. So I'll go to now source time, and in my case, I am in Eastern time. So I'll go ahead and say Eastern time, which is US and Canada, which is my source. Come in over here again, and my destination will also be Eastern time. I'll keep it that way. Here is where you can pick and choose all your formatting ones. So I'm going to go with a little simple one today. I'll go with this format, which is, it gives me a long and full date and time in the long syntax. And then after I've gotten that, I'll go ahead and put the output over here, so you can actually see what is going on. So let's go ahead and select this dynamic value. And in the dynamic value, I can go ahead and grab the converted time. You see how this looks over here in this, granted it's experimental mode, but it just makes it a little bit more easier for you to see what you've done, even search for it. I kind of like this experimental mode. So now let's go and do a test of this one. All right, you'll be able to see both the designs. It is actually what it was before, does the conversion, and what it comes after that. So I'll go ahead and do it manually again. And we're going to go ahead and run it this time. successfully started the flow, successfully ran the flow. Okay, so we know what the original thing was, original syntax was. It went and did the conversion. Now I'll come over here. Oh, and that looks so much more easier to even read what that is. So that was your big tip, is that even though there is the convert time zone, you can still use that to go ahead and change the syntax over here. All right, kind of important. All right, Reza, I think I have one more I can show you. This is a really neat one from an expression standpoint, and that is to actually put in some text, and then how I can go and change the text. I think I have a little bit more time on that. So let's show some tricks on the expressions piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now come into the edit piece over here. I'll edit the flow, and I'll start putting in a text. So in the text, I'm going to just put in raw text, right? So that's where the text will come in. So that's the first input I'm putting in. Next, I'm going to come in, say, all the way to the end. And in the end, I'm going to now put in, actually, I can go and put in another compose statement in the compose. And where are you, compose? There you are, compose. And in the compose, I am going to now go ahead and click on the expressions. And in the expressions, I'm going to type in replace. Come on. Come on. All right, let's do one thing. As a test, I'll go ahead and get the actual, go back to our center. I'm going to go and turn this off. Again, this is always live, so we never know what's going on. I'll go and get out of the experimental mode. We'll also check to see how much we've lost. Whoa, I totally lost all my work. Is that even possible? Already show live, just to make sure. Nope. Oh, okay, good. Let's go and try that one more time. I'm going to come in and put another compose. And if this thing doesn't work, I have one more nice example I can show you. So I've gone, okay, not too bad. So I'm going to come in, and in our string functions, the one that I want to use is the whole concept of going ahead and using the replace function. So in the replace one, I am coming in right there, the replace one. Here is how it works. So I can go ahead and actually get, after you've selected this replace, you've got the expression, go ahead and click on dynamic, and the one that is coming in is from the original trigger. So I got to go and search for that. So in my original trigger, it is which are the ones that actually work from that point. So I guess I can go and get the entire body of that, or let's see what we got. From the manual trigger one, I'm not able to actually see what my text is. So what I'll do is, let's see if I can go and grab this one, the text. Oh, that's why, because it missed it out over there. Let me go and put in my replace. I'll just put in raw text, save it. Input is required. That's fine. That's just the flow checker. Let's come back over here. Let me go back to my expressions. Replace. No, actually not. Just to be on the safe side, let's do a search because we're all learning this together. I want to click on it. Let's go to expressions. Let's go in under string functions. I'm going to go back and say, which one works best? Because all I want to do is actually just replace the format. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a replace. Selected that. Inside the cursor stays inside the bracket. I want to go outside. That's where my raw text is. In the raw text, if there is anything which says hard, H-A-R-D, I want to replace it to easy, or let's say even fun. You can do it that way. Now I'll go ahead and save it, and I'll go ahead and do a test. Saving is complete. I'll do a test. Manual runs. All right, so this time I actually put in a, an initial item that I had to put in, which is text. So I'm going to say Power Automate is hard. Okay, I'll run that. So it went into the text, says that the flow triggered off successfully. It ran successfully. Everything is good. But now let's see what we put in over here. So the top one I've actually put in Power Automate is hard. I go to all the way to the compose, and over there it tells me Power Automate is fun. So we went ahead and used our first very simple expression, which is to go ahead and do a replacement of a text just to go and see, see how these expressions work. Now, I think I have some time, so I'm going to take this to the last level because this is something I know there's people on this call who will love this. And we're going to go ahead and make now an HTTP call. So let's try that, okay? All right. I think I can get this one done. I think I'm good enough. I may need your help for this one, okay? So stay on standby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go my HTTP. I can select that, or I already see that's the one that I want. And if all of you who know me and my family, we are big Lego fans. And one of the websites that I actually do a lot of reference to when I build my Lego apps. It's called as Rebreakable.com. And over there, they actually have their own API. So what that API actually works is it's the ability to go ahead and do, click on their website and you go ahead and use their API link that you have. And you hey, Reza, you may have to mute on your site. And then you can go ahead and put in, names and numbers and whatnot. But here's basically what it is. I'll go ahead and now, this is the URL, and I can go and get this type of raw data that comes in bulk, which is pretty normal. When you go and do a get call from HTTP, it literally gets all the information. So let's first try that just to see, hey, is it even working from the Power Automate side? So all I'm doing is a get call. I'm going to go and paste it, and I'll just go ahead and now save it just to make sure how the data is coming in. So I'm saving it. Let's do a test. I think I will have to put in some text over there. So I'll just put in hard. That way we know that the flow at least will run successfully. So it failed. That's because maybe I did not put in invalid token. Let's just make sure I put it in correctly. Sometimes, oh yeah, because I put in an extra single quotes. See, that happens. So let me see, because I didn't save it up over there, it automatically put in the save and test, which is perfect. I'll go and do a hard. Type in the hard. It runs. Oh, I like it. It ran successfully. So let's see what all came in. It went ahead and pulled in. Basically, it's a little nicer when we go ahead and get all this information. The body is pulling in all this information. So for some of you who don't know, I put in the Lego part number, which is 3031. 3031 is a 4x4 by 1 layer of a Lego brick. In fact, we should be able to simply go ahead and click on this link and see what that image is all about. Let's quickly go and do that. Grab it here. That way, at least you see what that image is. Pasted, no double quotes. That's what the Lego brick I was talking about. See, it's a 4x4 single layer. All right. Now, the data is coming in. You made the correct correction. How do I go ahead and parse that data? Well, I just answered my own question. There is actually a parse format. So before you go and do the parse format, here's the tidbit. Go ahead back to your run flow. See that output that you have and go and grab this entire thing. This body, I'm going ahead and grabbing this entire format. Just to be on the safe side, you're welcome to go ahead and open an entire Notepad or Notepad++ and paste it over there. But the concept that I'm showing you right now is that I don't need to know how, what JSON syntax I need or JSON/HTML. I'm not doing any of that. I just ran this successfully, HTTP. I went to the body. I went in and picked up this format. And now I'll go back into the edit. And I'll go to the edit. And I'll go and now search for parse. That's all I'm doing. And there you go, parse JSON. Well, what is the content that you're parsing? That's easy. I'll click on it. And I'm saying all I'm going to parse is this body. That is the body. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to say generate from sample. Well, there I'm literally doing a copy and paste of what I just copied. And I'm pasting what I just copied. And check this out. This is where it will also go ahead and do a verification. If you are even off by a single close bracket or a semicolon or something, it will give you an error. But the fact that I'm able to save it is perfect. So I'm going to go and click on save, and it's going ahead and saving it. We're all good. Let's do a test. Yes, I'll still have to put in that text over there. So let me just go and put in Power Apps is hard, just for the sake of that original condition that we put in. It started successfully. It ran successfully. But now I get it in this format. But it might look the same, but here's the difference. In this case, now if I go ahead and put in a compose statement, I go take a look at just a simple compose, put that over here. See, it's no longer just a body coming in from the HTTP. I can go and pick and choose each and every one of these things, right down from the part number to the part URL. What it did was it went ahead and parsed. Parse basically means it went ahead and got the data for you, specifically took the syntax that you want, broke it down into each of those different elements, and then has provided those elements for you one at a time. This is always a very tried and tested and best way to go ahead and get loads of data, specifically raw data that you need. You're able to go and pull that in from wherever. You made an HTTP call over here. You could make an HTTP call somewhere else. Put it in the parse JSON, and then The syntax, you don't even have to come up with that. You don't have to go Bing or Google for it. Whatever we ran on the HTTP, it went and showed us the body, the actual code over there. And after that, you're able to go ahead and break down into, piece by piece, each of these different things, which was the name of the part ID. I was able to go ahead and get that one by one. Now, while we are here, I want to show this one last piece, which is pretty neat. And that is, you do know that you can actually go ahead and see how we can see the code behind all of this. So I'll actually go back. Let's go outside. And us everyday users, you may not even want to use this one. Actually, I need to go back inside. But some of the heavy coding people, they will love this. And you know that there's a functionality in the menu, which is the 3 ellipses dot, and you can see peak code. When you click on the peak code, this is what the entire thing looks like. The actual way which Power Automate behaves as far as all the actions that it's doing. Like, what is it? So right now, for the HTTP one, I know you understood what the HTTP was doing. It's going ahead and doing a get. But see what it is doing. It's going and doing a get to that URL, and it goes ahead and pulls it back in. What if you want to try that peak code over here in the convert time zone? There is giving us a little bit more estimation as to what's going on. It's obviously a convert time zone, but the base time, this is the actual syntax that it uses to go ahead and get the original UTC. And then it goes ahead and brings it back. It's actually giving you a breakdown of the code format that Power Automate uses to send information and then get information. Some of the developers really like this kind of format because they can go in and do that and make their own HTTP calls over there. So I know, Reza, I covered a whole bunch, but I just wanted to show some of those, that expression format. Big one was to go ahead and change the naming functionality, the syntax of the UTC now. And then I also showed some tips and tricks on how to use the HTTP to make that call and return some of that data over there. So I know I covered a lot, but this was pretty neat. And what do you think, Reza?
For me, the key takeaways around expressions are, there are certain actions that are available, like you showed, like date time conversions. Deepak actually asked a very good question. Date time actions that are available, or should I be using expressions? Well, you could use either. Here's another one. Dan just used Parse JSON to parse the data out of the response that he got from that Lego API that was called. So can I avoid Parse JSON as well? Yeah, you could use expressions and directly parse through. But the question here is, which option should I take? Both options are viable. Citizen developers will prefer the easier path, Parse JSON, existing actions. But if you ask my viewpoint, there's something known as API calls or entitlements. It's currently in the transition period. It's going to be effective very soon. Once it is, every action in your flow is going to be, you have to be careful of how many actions you add in a flow. So the better option is to go down the path of learning expressions and deep diving into expressions, because an expression can do everything what an action can for you. So recommendation is to learn about expressions, and peak code is your friend in Power Automate. Any action in flow, if you just go to the 3 ellipses, Dan showed that, go to peak code, you can grab the expression. So you don't have to be an expert at creating those expressions. You can use the UI or the existing actions. And then once you have it, go and grab the expression and just add it in a single expression. You can even nest expressions. So if you have 10 different actions, you can bring it all into a single expression and execute it at one go. Performance is one of the biggest reasons. Okay, so moving over to the next part, and I'm glad that when Dan was showcasing his flow and when he ran the flow, he had an error. So when Dan received an error, he went to the Flow Explorer, he went to the Flow Checker, he saw what the error message was, that there's something wrong with the API. He went in and he quickly realized that there's a mistake right here. So he went ahead and he tried to fix that issue. So let me cover some aspects around error handling, something that unfortunately is not handled by all flow makers. Any business critical flow that you create has to have good exception handling, period. Now here, I have a flow that has information to fetch data from a specific system and create some records. Now, this is an example, let's say, of a business critical flow. My entire organization uses this. It's very important for our business. Now, when this flow runs, there are chances that the flow can fail. And if you look at the run history of my flow right here, there are a combination of things. I've got successes, I've got failures, I've got cancellations, and a lot more. The flow run history is maintained only for 28 days. So this is extremely important to understand and realize that after 28 days, if you would like to go back and see what had happened to a specific flow run, you cannot do that unless you store that history somewhere in the system of record. Now, what happens when a flow fails? Do I get a notification immediately that my flow has failed and here's the error, so I can go in, make the fix to rerun that specific flow run? Can I do something like that in Flow? The answer is no. Flow does not do that out of the box. What Flow does is this. Once a day, randomly, it will send you this email that says, okay, as the owner of the flow, as the creator of the flow, Reza, you have 3 of your flows have been failing. Why have they failed? What is the reason for their failure? Which specific runs have caused those failures? None of that information is available here. All I know is that these specific flows are failing. And if I click on any of these, it will take me to the run history for that flow. And then again, it's up to me to go and find out which ones failed, click on it, go and see why it failed, read the error details. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to try and figure out why has my flow failed. So how do we do error handling in Flow? Here, I have a flow that I've created, and I've called this as error handling. I have made this entire flow available on my GitHub repo as well. So if anyone wants to check this flow out in action and strip out the expressions from here, feel free to do so. So I want to show you what this flow does and how I went about handling errors. Now in this flow, I have these blocks. I'm calling it try and catch. So anyone who comes from basic development background would have heard about try, catch, and finally. It's the common pattern for handling exceptions. I have a try block. Anything I write on the try block, if anything fails, I catch that exception in the catch block, and I can even have a finally block that goes ahead and executes the code, definitely if something fails. So how do you create these blocks? Does Flow have a action for try, catch, exception handling? No. However, Flow has a very useful action called scope. And what scope allows me to do is it allows me to add multiple actions within it. So these blocks that I have created right here are nothing but scopes. And I have just renamed them to try and catch. Now in my try block right here, so let me delete the scope. In my try block right here, I have a couple of actions. And in the first action here, I have purposely written an expression that results in a failure. So let's not get into what this expression is. But this expression will fail because it's trying to specifically pinpoint to an attribute in that variable that does not exist. Now, this is just a simple example. Think about this. You're trying to query your data source, and maybe for some reason that connector is down. Maybe access is down. Or maybe someone deleted a specific column that you're trying to read from a data source of choice. There are many reasons why a flow can fail. You cannot handle all of that in one go. But if I know specific areas in my flow that can potentially cause issues, let's check this out. Creating a variable more or less is never going to fail in a flow. More or less, it's never going to fail. Calling a data source, performing expressions, writing some logic, there is a chance that something can fail. Null exception, item not available, access denied. There are so many reasons why something could fail. Dan showcased an HTTP call that failed because the API request was not right. So if I add all those actions right here in my try block, in my catch block, I can actually catch that exception, whatever that exception is. Now, firstly, when something fails in the try block, how does the flow know that it has to execute the catch block? If I zoom in here, you will observe something different. Here, the arrow that goes from try to catch is red in color. So why is that red in color? Well, if I go to the 3 ellipses right here and go to configure run after, you can decide when this block will run. So in my case, I've said run this block only if the try block has failed. Okay. So when this block fails, that means anything in that block, if there is an exception, if there's a failure, in that case only go ahead and call the catch block. And in the catch block, I'm going to try and catch the exception. Now, is there any expression that gives me details of an error? Well, the answer to that is also a yes. Here, I have something known as result. There's a function called result. And all the result needs is the name of your action. In my case, my action is called try. I have a scope called try. So I'm going to grab the result of try. Once I get that result, I'm going to query that result where the status is equal to failed. That result gives me all the details. It gives me the details of any action that has passed. It gives me the details of failures, everything. So I'm catching all of the ones that are failing. Then I'm creating something known as an array in which I'm going to show the error code and the error message, the actual error message that Flow spits out. So I'm catching that. I'm creating a table and I'm sending a notification email to the owner of the flow, or in this case, to myself. And here as well, I've written another expression to get the details of the flow run. So how do I get the details of the flow run? Let me show you what that expression looks like. That expression looks like this. And I have pre-created this, of course, but I'm going to paste it right here. Once again, expressions to the rescue. This is going to give me a link directly to the currently running item of my flow. Very, very important. Now let's go ahead and test this flow. Right? So I'm going to click test. I'm going to run this manually. The flow is about to get triggered. I'm going to click done. The flow has run. And as we can see right here, the try catch has resulted in an error. My flow has succeeded though. The reason is because I have handled the exception. I'm not waiting for Flow to send me an email after a day that says your flow has failed for 5 times. Go and figure out why. Now in this, when this action failed, you see the next action never got executed. So the try block just failed. I handled it in the catch block. Now in the catch block, if we look at the result of try, and if I go to show raw outputs, here I get all the details. These are the 2 actions that I had inside my try block. One was called error action, wherein I was purposely creating an error. The other one was the set variable action right here. You can see both the names are right here. You can even see what happened with it. This action failed, bad request, invalid template. It was unable to process because my expression was not valid. The actual message is right here. The next action, that is set variable, actually skipped. Why? Because the previous action failed. It never executed this action. So every little detail of what happened is available in that result action. Now I am interested only in the ones that failed. So I created this filter array to just give me the ones that failed. Once I had that, I created an HTML table to send myself an email, and that email looks like this. Now you see how much better this is. There are many reasons for it. Reason number 1, I get notified immediately when the flow fails. Reason number 2, it gives me the message of why the flow is failing. I can even call out the action, by the way. This action failed at this date and this time. This is the error code, and this is the actual message is because my expression did not handle null values. Full details are available right here. And to top all of this, now if I need to go and look at which flow run had failed out of my 100 runs or 1,000 runs, if I just click on this link, it will directly open up that specific flow run for me right here. You see, I'm right there to that flow run. So this is extremely, extremely powerful. It's a very neat pattern that you can use in any of your flows. And trust me, this is a pattern that everyone should be utilizing for every flow, irrespective of whether it's a business critical flow or not. So that's about expressions and error handling specifically using flows, which is extremely, extremely powerful. Dan, any questions on this part?
No, I mean, I like the fact that what was big wow for me was you created the link such that that link takes you directly where the error was. That to me was super helpful. I also like how you're able to show that if something is wrong, it will bypass that step and go on over there. So that error handling flow, you kind of did a great job explaining it over there too. This is not something like this is not available out of the box. So I personally would spend time investing in building this. That's pretty neat, man. That is pretty neat.
And there's a nice question as well. This is from Gaurav. What happens after 28 days? Well, firstly, I'm being notified immediately. So if the user is really waiting for 28 days, that means they are not much interested in what's going on in the system, first of all. Second, if by chance I miss this message or I miss this, at least if I want to know what was the error that had occurred, because I'm going to lose this after 28 days, you have all of this information. Nothing stops me from taking that result block and putting it in a data source. So I never lose that information. If I ever want to go back and see the trends of my flow, I can check my data source to see the entire history. So you would have to take that extra step. One last thing that I would like to cover as part of my section here is something around copying and pasting. Now, before this, I showed you a very simple example of copy paste, right? I created that action and I said, copy it and paste it. Great. That worked pretty well. But what if I want to copy and paste across user sessions? Okay. So let's take an example. This update item action, or let's take some other example. Let's say this create HTML table action. Okay. Or any action that's available in Flow. If I want to copy a specific action, all we do is go right here and say copy to clipboard. Now, if I go to a different flow, let's take an example of my error handling flow. If I go right here and add an action and go to my clipboard, I will see it. Why? Because this is my clipboard, right? I had copied it, so it's available for my session. But if I was to refresh my browser and clear my browser cache, so let's say I have a different browser open, I'm trying to move it from one flow to another. If I go to my clipboard, it's gone, right? I lose it. Why? Because I refreshed my cache, it's gone. Let's go one level higher. Here I've created scopes. And in these scopes, I have multiple actions. These are things that are not available out of the box in Flow. For example, get me a list of all the members of a SharePoint group. I want their email addresses. Well, here's a REST API call to get that. Here is a pattern to read the emails. And this will give you the emails semicolon separated. Perfect for using them in expressions. Perfect, right? Now, this is a nice pattern that I've built here. Now, what if I want to copy this? Yeah, you can copy this. You can go to a different flow and literally paste it here. But what if my browser session got cleared? Well, no problem. Even if it got cleared, as long as you have it copied in your clipboard, if you go right here and do a Control V, it will still show up. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Well, check this out. If I want to share this with Dan, not the flow, just a part of the flow, I am calling these flow snippets, reusable code, right? I want to share this with Dan. All I have to do is this, go to OneDrive, literally do a Control V here. So whatever I copied from there, when I did copy to clipboard, it's actually getting copied to your clipboard. If I do a Control V, it puts the code right here. This is the backend underlying code. Now, guess what? If I was to share this file with Dan, and all Dan does is copies this, goes to his flow. So let's say I clear my cache. Let's assume this is Dan coming in, going right here. He is going to a flow. He goes to my clipboard. He won't see it. But if he goes here and literally just copies this code and then does a Control V, boom, it shows up.
Nice.
So these are like snippets, right? These are code snippets that we can reuse across browser sessions, across tenants, and even share it with people. You know, I did a video on this and no one watched it. It was very sad. That's okay. And I actually shared all of these snippets. I have a video coming in which I wanted to do something like this, wherein I wanted to read the SharePoint group members. And I was like, why am I reinventing the wheel? I have my code snippet. I'll just go and steal it. So that's an example of copy paste to the next level.
That is awesome. I mean, the sharing not across your own, environments or something, across tenants, but you're able to share with you to me. That's a huge learning one. I can already see people saying how that was a very nice one, sweet. Didn't know about that. Some really nice, outputs over here. All right, so we're almost out of time. So for the last thing that I had, I'll just briefly talk about it, and then we'll go into some Q&A time. And one of the big ones was about the approval actions. So it is a very important actions. I've done videos on it. Everybody heavily uses it. But there's this one big item or aspect about that you need to know is that when whoever makes the approval, makes the flow and has that connector tied to that person's name shows up in the approval. Well, what do I mean? I'll show you an example. That we have a simple user. The simple user is going ahead and putting in a request, right? It's basically just to go and put in a request for getting an amount approved. When that user submits that in, it basically goes ahead and triggers a flow. The flow is going through an approval process, and the approval process basically just stops over here. It's waiting in the approval place. The person, which in this case is going through the manager of that approval, this is what the email gets. It's like, okay, your approval is required by Finn Christian, which is the person who requested it. But then also it comes with this one. It's like requested by Daniel Christian. So wait, here's a confusion. Who is doing what? Did the approval come in from one person, or was it requested? What is this? This has been a bit of a confusion. And one of the things is, now that I've explained this to you, and if you've used this, you know that this means Daniel Christian was the one who created the flow. And that is why the approval connector tied to that flow has this person's name connected to it. Now, a couple of things I have already tried. In fact, Reza and I were just talking about this before as well, is that even though you are able to some magically take over the primary ownership of that flow, even that won't solve this problem, because the original connection is tied to that person, which is the original person who created the flow. So connection of that flow is what's debate of that flow, specifically the approval action. That is what determines this place over here. And there's no way you can go and hide this. It just shows up. So what's the workaround, or what's the best solution to this? The best solution to this is to finally go, and wherever your flow is, you want to go ahead and export that flow out. Not just do a save as, but actually export it as that zipped file. Then you want to go into whoever is the one which is perfect for that flow scenario. So in my case, I actually have an account. That account is going to be the do not reply account. That do not reply is the one who's going to be the actual flow creator. So I'll go ahead and now export that zip file. I'll come in over here to basically going back into my flows. In my flows, I'll go and click on import. When I click on import, it'll come to me to this place where I can go ahead and upload that file. And in the uploaded file, this is where I import or upload the approval, zip of the approval, which is the flow that I created. And once it uploads it, it'll go ahead and do the uploading. It'll come to this very important place, and I won't deep dive too much into that, but it'll come to this very important place where it says, okay, these are the connections that are tied to that flow. And then you go and select yourself. Like, see right here, you will be now selecting yourself as the owner or the creator of that. And now this new user will be the one who will be tied to that approval flow. And therefore, moving forward, your name or original creator won't be tied to the flow. It will be this new service account, for lack of a better term. That person's name will be tied over there. This is a built-in process for Power Automate flows. You cannot actually go and do any fix to it. Like, there's no setting or anything which is there in Power Automate to stop doing that. It just comes directly along with it. So you have a way to work around it. Just use what is there, work around it. And the workaround way was for the approvals, go ahead and actually use a different account that is going to be there. Like a do not reply was my one. You could go and say this is an Power Automate service or something like that, which makes the end user understand that, okay, it comes automatically because of Power Automate. But the original requester, yeah, that person is a little different. So I know, it's not a foolproof, idea. Some people don't really like that, but this is what it is, and that's how you got to work around with. Cool. Any questions on that one, Reza?
No, I think that's pretty handy information that everyone needs to be aware of. So very useful, and that kind of covers our tips and tricks in an hour. I think we covered a lot, from expressions to flow types to error handling to copy pasting to templates. So don't forget templates. And yeah, that was the session. So the floor is open now for 5 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the comments. Put a Q before your question so we know that you're trying to ask a question. And I and Dan will try and pop those questions up on screen. So here's a question from Power Fan Addict. That's Gerard. I know his name. In terms of try scope, is there an upper limit on steps or type of steps? I'm assuming, Gerard, your question is around how many actions can I add in a scope. I'm not sure if there's a limit. I have not gone all out crazy there. I believe you should be able to add as many as you want. I think a flow has a limit of what, 250 actions in total that you can have in a flow. So I'm assuming the scope would also be somewhat limited to that space. It's my assumption. Okay. All right. So trying to see if there are any other questions coming in. We've got one from Uday. It's not a question. He's saying, Reza, have you tested the URL after 28 days? I bet it works for a few days past the 28 days. No, I have not tested. Interesting to know that it still exists. Maybe there's some back-end job that goes and clears that history. So yeah, there may be a few days leeway that we get. So yeah, probably. Okay. Any other questions that I see here? There's Carsten again. Hello, Carsten. He says, I foresee a snippet library upcoming. Yeah, actually, I'm pretty surprised that people have not done that because, so I'll tell you, there is another aspect in Flow called child flows that allows you to build those reusable flows. There were a lot of videos done on this. Deepak was on the call as well, also created a video on child flows. So child flows allow you to create those reusable patterns, but I think snippets are also pretty neat because many a times I don't want to call another flow. I just need that specific piece of code in my use case, and I want to be able to modify it. So yeah, I think a snippet library would be very handy. Some common patterns that people try to acquire every time would be handy. Expressions, complex expressions, nested expressions, you can have snippets of those ready and share it with your users. So I do agree that those kind of patterns could come in extremely handy. Okay, do we have any other questions? We have one from Pankaj. I did face difficulties in copy pasting few blocks of code or actions. Is it a product bug? So copy paste, if you would have observed very closely, is an action that's in preview. So if for some reason something fails, well, there may be certain bugs. Flows are very dependent upon actions. So if I have 3 actions in a scope and they are dependent on each other, or they are dependent on a loop that is running on top of it, if I try and copy that and try and paste it somewhere else, it will fail. So you got to be careful with copy paste. There shouldn't be dependencies with other actions. So there are certain limitations, and there could actually be certain specific bugs as well. If there are any, you can highlight it out on the ideas forum on powerusers.microsoft.com. Okay. What else do I see? I see that, Dan, you've been responding. There is okay. So I think that kind of covers the questions. I'm trying to see if there are any previous questions. Dan, someone asked for your URL to the API for Lego as well. If you want. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. Thank you. Okay, I think one last question we'll take. This is probably a good question for Dan. Nilesh, and Nilesh, by the way, is using the face of my favorite actor. So I had to get this question out. If any flow is developed and connections are configured by a specific member, but now to change the connections, we need to change at each of those connectors within flow. Great point. You'll have to go and change it at a connector level in that flow. Is there any direct way to do it in one go?
Any direct way to do it in one place? Yeah, I mean, if the example that I showed, if you go ahead and export that flow as the zip file, and when you import it in one location, it will tell you here are all the connectors tied to it. Go ahead and actually change it right there, and you can go ahead and authenticate it. One of the neat things I like over there is that if that wasn't one of your existing connectors, right there you can go ahead and put in the authentication for this new connector, and it will allow you to add that connector in. So that kind of is what you're asking. It is in a one-stop shop place to go ahead and add all these new connectors in the importing functionality. Just a couple of things you want to keep in mind when you do that is you're importing a new flow. So the previous flow, stop it. If any flows are still running, they will still finish it, but then give all the users of the flow that, hey, this is happening. We're doing a transition. Maybe plan it at an off-peak time so that there's people don't get annoyed that flows aren't working. Just do it in an off-peak time. When you are, the export is the easy part. It exports into zip. It's the import, that's where you pick and choose. Okay, here are my new connectors and here are the authentications. And it happens all in that one-stop shop place over there. Cool.
Just to add to that, in Flows, there's also something known as the Power Automate Admin connector. It's a connector that administers or admins of an environment or your global admins, they can leverage those connectors. And in there, I believe there's an option to change the connection of a specific flow. So if you're thinking of automation, that'll be work. But of course, you can write a flow to change the connections of a specific flow as well. So a little bit more advanced, but that is something that you can take up as well. Okay, I think we are on time. I see other questions coming in. Don't forget, this video, once we end the broadcast, will be available on demand on Dan's channel. So go ahead, subscribe to Dan's channel. You can go back to the video, watch it on demand, and post your questions and comments there. I'm sure Dan and I would be coming in to respond. And before we close out for today, just one last part. So let us go back to screen sharing. Dan, you want to pop that up on screen?
I have. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I need to close this question that's on the screen. There you go. We are ready.
Awesome. All right. So once again, our friend Bioden Baidi, your name is one thing, but your skill set, man, amazing skill set. I think when we start next year, we will probably just hand over this to you because obviously we suck at it and you are an expert. But this was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Also, next session that we're going to do, well, before I go to the next session, I have to show this is where we stand on all our tweets that we're capturing. Remember, in the next session, we'll be picking, and we'll know who is the official winner, and it's close, man. It's very close. The numbers are getting close, and we'll definitely wait till the last moment of our next session, and we will know who's the winner, and then have like a solid 30 minutes one-on-one time with us. Hit us with any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help. All right. Finally, our next session is going to be on November 5th. It is immediately the day after the Ignite. And over there, Reza and I are going to cover all these new releases that are done. Now, keep in mind that Reza and I are going to cover a lot. It's not just the Power Platform, because as we've known, based on all the sessions and these shows that we've done, we go above and beyond. We talk about SharePoint, we talk about forms, we talk about other connectors. So in this Ignite, after Ignite or the Ignite, overview or the recap session, we'll be talking everything that we've learned. Reza and I actually are planning how to approach this so we can grab all the information and give you all a good recap. So this is the day, November 5th. We'll get our a YouTube video ready for that. We'll advertise it, and that day, him and I will cover as much as can. In fact, Reza may even be able to demo a few things. We'll see. We'll see what all tricks he pulls up from his sleeve. But he might be even able to demo some of those things. We'll try our best to do that.
So I think Dan covered it all, but Ignite is going to be vast. There's going to be a lot of topics. Dan and I are actually planning to go into separate sessions purposely so that we can cover knowledge, get it together, and present it to you in one go on November 5th. So if Ignite is too overwhelming, it's on the weekdays. No problem. We've got you covered. We'll cover all the important announcements. The demos, of course, Dan and I are MVPs. We get access to a lot of preview stuff. So if it is announced at Ignite, I'm sure we'll be able to showcase a few of the features. If we are, rest assured, Dan and I will show that in action. So make sure you join our session on November 5th, exactly the day after Ignite. And that's a Friday. So it kind of just fell in place, and Dan and I were discussing on what the topic should be. That will also be the last R&D show for this year. And we're going to take a break for the holidays, and then we'll be back stronger, better next year. So join us on November 5th, once again, for an Ignite recap. We will cover as much as we can in that 1 hour. So bring in your questions, and we'll also announce the winners for the R&D show. And thank you for joining today. Thank you for participating, and keep the love coming.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.